thousands of children were to lose their lives, were sold into slavery, or became homeless. The drama began in 1212 here in front of the cathedral in Cologne and in a French village called Cloyes. Almost at the same time, the 10-year-old Nicolas and the young shepherd Etienne are said to have had identical visions. They were to lead their peers to the Holy Land and reconquer Jerusalem. They were supposed to do what the powerful couldn't. As we shall see, it ended tragic, even for the age of the Crusades. And the influx of participants was reportedly considerable. Up to 30,000 children are said to have followed Etienne. 7,000 children joined the charismatic Nicholas, who supposedly became the historical role model of the Pied Piper of Hamelin through his sermons. However, this is controversial among historians. Both leaders insisted that no weapons, equipment, or ships were needed. God would part the sea before them to bring them safely to the Holy Land. Some priests supported this misconception. They gave their blessings and let the multitude of young people set out in the belief that they had not only God's approval, but also that of the church. Etienne, who is said to have been 12 years old, sat on a classic cart under a canopy. Around him were the few participants in the project who had a horse. Tens of thousands of other children dragged themselves forward on foot under the scorching July sun. Nicholas led his followers across the Alps to reach the Holy Land from Italy. The efforts of such an enterprise, the harsh environmental conditions, and the inadequate nutrition quickly took their toll. There were illnesses and death. The number of casualties increased rapidly on both campaigns. The radicalized participants found themselves in a desperate situation. They were already too far from home to return. They had sworn sacred oath, which is why they thought their souls were in danger if they would stop the project, and in the case of the German Crusade, they did not even speak the language. They couldn't ask locals for help. Initially, they were provided with food and clothing by local residents because they were often the families of participants, but this stopped with increasing travel distance. Eventually, the authorities had to intervene. The French Crusade reached Paris. It was here that Etienne actually planned to demand the king's support. Philip, however, didn't have any of it. He ordered the children to go home. The project had come to an end. Most of the participants responded to the call, but not all. The sources differ as to whether Etienne moved on or returned home. The German project was stopped in Rome by the Pope, having already met with open hostility in Genoa. Innocent III praised the adolescents for their religious convictions, but declared that they were too young for such an undertaking. Later, the head of the church is said to have complained that the children would shame the powerful. Some of the participants are said to have tried to return to Germany and failed. In this case, there were participants who did not want to give up as well. Whether Nicholas was among them is uncertain. Before we turn to the sad fate of those who did not want to give up, we must briefly let historians have their say, because they discussed for a long time whether the Children's Crusade even existed. The background to this is that there is no known eyewitness report from participants. And, let's face it, because the whole story sounds pretty crazy, even for the 13th century. A total of around 50 sources report on the Children's Crusade. Only about 20 of them are considered reliable, as they were written before 1220. The Chronicle of Alberich of Troyes-Fontaine, for example, is used only reluctantly because it was written decades later. There are similar problems with the depiction in Matthew Paris. However, the number of sources is too large to relegate the Children's Crusade as a whole to the realm of fables. Historians of our time also discuss whether it was really children who went on the crusade. Examples include Peter Reetz and Gray Dixon. The Latin term peregrinatio puerum, which can be found in many sources, is decisive. We translate the words as Children's Crusade. However, both words can also have other meaning. Peregrinatio, for example, can simply mean pilgrimage. Puer can refer to members of lower social classes and marginalized groups. Because of this, the theologian Ulrich Gebler, for example, assumes that it was more of a Jerusalem pilgrimage than a full-fledged crusade. It is generally argued against this idea that Innocent explicitly referred to the age of the participant when he sent them home. Nevertheless, it is considered largely certain that some adults were also present. Or it is possible that there were impoverished farmers and homeless people who joined the project along the way. Again and again, the Children's Crusade was also brought close to the Pastorella and Flagellant movements. However, this is unrealistic since they had a fundamentally different goal than the liberation of Jerusalem. But what happened to the participants who didn't give up? Unsurprisingly, the sea did not part in any of the cases. The French children wanted to embark for the Holy Land via Marseille. Here they came across two merchants named Hugh the Iron and William the Pig. The second nickname already indicates what happened next. The merchants offered their ships for free. Some of them sank with the children. Those who reached the Holy Land docked in Muslim ports. The two merchants sold the children into slavery. It was not until 18 years later that a cleric who had returned home was able to inform the families. The German project ended similarly in Italian ports. Some of the children were sold as slaves, others drowned while trying to make the crossing, and still others stayed in Italy and became criminals, only to be caught and executed by the authorities. While the French project was likely stopped early enough for some participants to still be able to return home, this was not the case with the German Children's Crusade. I would like to end this story with wise words, but that wouldn't fit. It is just sad.